Pastor Alan Jackson from World Outreach Church, right down the road from me in Murfreesboro. He has a new show coming out, and it airs tonight on TBN, 7 o'clock, called Alan Jackson Now. Pastor, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Mike. How are you today?
Good to talk to you. Congratulations on the new show. Not an easy undertaking. Give us the gist of it, and then I got a bunch of big life questions for you. But what is Alan Jackson Now? What's the goal here?
Well, it felt like we just needed a bit of perspective on what's happening in the world. We lost trust in so many sources from the CDC to Homeland Security to justice at the moment. So rather than be angry or upset or anxious about it, I thought just some perspective and a little bit of biblical worldview would bring some peace to folks. So that's why we're doing it.
Yep, that's what we need. That's the answer. Speak to me about anxiety. I feel like a lot of people have it. We're very anxious. Where does that come from?
Well, I think the simple answer for me, it's when you put your trust in the wrong place and you think something you've been counting on that would bring security to you, and you realize that it's fragile or can be shaken or taken away, then you start to get anxious. But if we can kind of transfer our trust and understand there's something that's beyond the U.S. government or the strength of the dollar or Wall Street or even the Justice Department that secures my future, I don't have to be as anxious about it. And so it's really, every time I get anxious, I say, what am I really trusting in, and what do I need to move around so I can be peaceful in the midst of all this turmoil?
What do you make of people who say, I don't even want to be involved in any of this stuff, any of this politics stuff? It's not, it's so bad. whatever the reason is, I want to just check out of it totally. What do you say about that?
Well, when you see evil and you don't do anything, you become part of the evil. So it seems a little harsh, but I would say to them, you're joining them with your attitude of ambivalence. We've got to use our voices. We've got to stand up. It may not feel like it makes a great deal of difference, but it'll make a great deal of difference to the 2 or 3 or 4 people that are in your circle of influence. So let's go use our voices and tell the truth and stand up for the right thing.
What's the difference between anger, which we saw a lot of on Friday? Well, let me do the anger question first. Anger and a righteous anger. How can those take us to 2 different places?
Well, I'm not sure I'm smart enough to parse that, but I don't think anger is wrong. God gets angry. What we're told is not to do the wrong thing when we're angry. So I think understand what it is that prompts our anger, and then what's a healthy way to express it. We don't want to do it, in violence or hate but there are some things that should make us angry. When they're mutilating our adolescents, that should make us angry. When they're sexualizing our little children, that should make us angry. And I don't think that anger is wrong. I think now what do we do about it? And so we've got to start asking a different question. I think we've been saying, what do we want to do? And I don't really think that's relevant. I'm pretty sure the guys in those Higgins boats headed towards the beach in Normandy didn't want to go. A more relevant question is, what do I need to do? And we're going to have to start to live with that question. What do I need to do in the midst of some of these things that are happening? And we're going to need to do some things that are different than what we've done in the past.
Yeah, the story, the guy on the D-Day boat, he was the guy, Frank DeVita. He was the guy in charge of lowering the door.
Yeah.
And the guy had to command him multiple times to lower the door, just to emphasize your point that he did not want to lower that door because he knew what was coming as soon as he did. I like that a lot. It's not what do we want to do. What do we need to do?
Absolutely.
What are some issues? What are some issues right now that are making you most like you just see is so wicked?
Well, I think the targeting of our children with this predatory behavior is totally unacceptable. From our casual attitude towards life and abortion to trying to sexualize our youngest children. I mean, in the little community where I live, we're having trouble getting pornographic books out of elementary school libraries. And I've heard Vanderbilt Medical Center boast about the profitability of transgender alterations on adolescents. I mean, those are just insane things. And then I watch the big picture. We have a Department of Homeland Security that won't secure our border but surveils parents at school board meetings. We ought to abolish the department if they're not going to do their job. I mean, you don't have to look very far to find something that'll get you torqued up. But on the other hand, I see amazing expressions of good. And I have such confidence in what is in people when we'll cooperate with God. That's what's made this nation great. And we can come back to that if we're willing to do some things that are a little more difficult than we've been willing to do for the past few years.
Just on that sexualizing of kids, trans-specific issue, I saw a video the other day of Newsom and governor of California, and he was asked about it, and he's slick, right, Pastor? He's slick. So he's like, oh, come on, man. You're talking about 1% of kids, and we just want to keep them safe. We want to keep these kids safe, and it's just 1%. And I'm here wanting to talk about global warming, which affects 100% of people. And I'm here talking about something that affects 100% of people, and you're focused on something that only affects 1% of people. What do you say to that?
Well, I say evil is often slick. He's not the first deceptive, manipulative, authoritarian nut job that stepped onto the stage of human history and was a really good liar. We've got a long list of those. But, I mean, that's the reality of who he is. He's in a better suit, and he likes to eat good food. But if it's 1% of the children that they're abusing, that 1% needs us to protect them. And the conversation, my background in academics started in the basic sciences, so I'm all for protecting the environment. But if you are burning coal to make the electricity that you put in your EV, that's not really a net gain. That's less efficient than burning the petroleum to begin with. So we need to start telling the truth about the environment.
Talking to Pastor Alan Jackson, World Outreach Church in Middle Tennessee. He's got a new show on TBN. Starts tonight. Alan Jackson Now. Tell us more about the show. What's the format of it? What's it going to look like? How's it flow? Is it you got guests? What's it looking like?
Yeah, I've got a guest every show. And I've tried to pick people from kind of different segments of what's going on. I talked to a former director of Homeland Security. I talked to the guy that's founded Free Burma Rangers, and he works on behalf of the persecuted Christians around the world. Amazing stories. I talked to some of the legal team that worked to get Dobbs through the Supreme Court. I really enjoyed meeting some of these people that are on the front line engaging some of these issues. I found out they're not angry. They're doing something. And it's been far more hopeful for me than I had thought it would. Just a little 30-minute show. It goes really quickly, and then we try to leave it with a little note of hope that gives you kind of a what we can do idea for the next day, so that we're not so, you watch the news and you get filled with despair, and we wanted to give some people an opportunity that had a bit of hope in it.
We were talking to our senator, Marsha Blackburn, I think on Friday, and she gave the number, and I forgot what the number was, but number of Christians who don't vote. And she's like, geez, if just like half of the Christians who don't vote voted, it'd be like a slam dunk. Like all this nonsense would be over. Why is that? Why do so many Christians not vote at all?
Well, I think for so long we've let this notion fester that we don't talk about politics or our faith in polite company, and the Christians have climbed into the bleachers. And we've got to wake up. It was Christian Europe that presided over the Holocaust. I mean, it wasn't some pagan culture. It wasn't some culture that didn't have the Christian faith. All those beautiful cathedrals and churches in Europe presided over the death camps. It wasn't just the Germans or the Nazis. The Christian Europe participated in that. And if we don't wake up, we're going to preside over something that's worse than that. Indifference is a sin. And I think I can't really explain why we choose not to, other than it's more difficult and we'd rather somebody else be responsible. But I pray that we'll wake up and take our place.
Can you speak to this? What's it called? Moral therapeutic deism. I think it's like I think it was John Barna who came up with this term to describe the religious ethic of the day. And it's basically just be nice. Like that's the highest value and the highest virtue is you just got to be nice. And if you're nice, then you'll go to this made up thing that we are making up, this afterlife kind of heaven version thing, that whatever. And God is your cosmic butler, someone to call on from time to time when you need something. It's sort of the modern view today. What do you make of this virtue of being nice?
Well, I think it's unscriptural. I was with Vodi Bakum on Saturday, and he says the 11th commandment is thou shalt be kind. And it's not biblical. And there's, if you only went to a doctor that told you good news and things you wanted to hear, we'd call that malpractice. And we would have his license taken away. And if in the context of our faith, we only hear good news and people tell us what we want to hear, that's spiritual malpractice. The reality is truth is often unsettling and uncomfortable because it requires a change of behavior to get to a better place. But it's also the best way to live, to have people around you that love you enough to tell you the truth. And I think where the Christian community is confused is we think it's love to tell people everything's good when it's not. And we're going to have the boldness and enough compassion for people to tell them the truth. It is not compassion to lie to people so they don't have to make course corrections. It's far more compassionate to tell them the reality of the world we live in.
I'm going to butcher this line, but my pastor was like 2 weeks ago. He ended the sermon with God. Man, he worded it perfectly. But something like, God has called no pastor to make man feel good, or something like that. It's like or make man feel comfortable. That's what it's comfortable, to make man feel comfortable. That's been what's been done a long time now in the Christian churches, is to make people feel comfortable and happy. And we got some battles to fight out there, Pastor. I know you know that. Can you help us work through something I noticed a lot on Friday's show after the verdict came down? There was a lot of despair, Pastor. Do you feel that and see that in people as well?
I did. For about 24 hours last week, I walked around going, this is awful, never happened before, it's overwhelming. And then I got this little simple idea down on the inside of me. What can we do? Let's decide to live in a way that pleases God. Let's just go please God. And I think if we'll think about that, we don't have to have the majority. It's not about how many of us there are. That's the story of Scripture. Gideon took a handful of people and overcame an overwhelming adversary. David took down Goliath. So those of us that are awake and paying attention and care about God's attitude, let's go please God. If we'll please Him, He'll deal with the knuckleheads. We don't have to. Don't pick up something that's not our responsibility. Our assignment is to go please God, and we can all do that today. What would it look like in our home or where we go to work or with our neighbors? How can we please God today? And let's lean into that. And then let's watch what God will do. They discount our boss. And I have ultimate confidence that He's watching over us. Let's just go focus on pleasing Him.
Tell us more about the show tonight, how we can tune in, sir.
It's Central Time at 6 p.m. It's on TVN. Just a little 30-minute broadcast. Really intended to give us a little perspective on what's happening in our world, talk to some of the people that are on the front lines working on policy or engaging with people in our nation and around the world, and then we'll give everybody a little bit of what we can do in the midst of that. If you enjoy it, share it with a friend.
So it's 7 o'clock Eastern. I appreciate you giving our time zone, God's time zone, 6 o'clock Central.
Absolutely.
TVN. Alan Jackson now. Pastor, great to talk to you, sir. Appreciate it.
Appreciate what you do, Mike. Keep it up.